welcome to Dallas Weekly News. I am Patrick Washington, your host. Today is April 7th, 2020. In local news, the City of Dallas's hospital capacity report has been delivered as of April 6th to the mayor's office. As of April 6th, the 24 hospitals that submitted aggregate information are as follows. The total number of beds were 5,353, 2,726 were occupied. ICU beds totaled 782, and of those, 482 were occupied. Total ventilators were 894, ventilators in use were 322. Please note that these numbers do fluctuate at a point in time. This is a snapshot, and the hospitals are expected to expand their bed capacity if necessary. The city is seeking compliance from hospitals that have not yet reported numbers. For more information on COVID-19, including test data, visit dallascityhall.com/coronavirus. In national news, we are fact-checking the president. President Trump pitched drugs that are not approved for coronavirus. According to the AP, Associated Press, journalists Hope Yen, Eric Tucker, and Calvin Woodard, President Donald Trump is pitching a medicine for COVID-19 sufferers that scientists have not concluded is effective or safe for their use. He said, take it, take the drug. For people sick with the coronavirus, he said Sunday, it can help them, but it's not going to hurt them. In fact, it may or may not help some people, and it may or may not hurt some people. His straight-ahead advocacy for hydroxychloroquine, a malaria drug, is the latest and one of the most consequential examples of Trump and public health authorities not being on the same page in this pandemic. His statement came during a weekend when he also misinterpreted the facts behind his firing of an intelligence community's inspector general whose handling of a whistleblower complaint led to the impeachment proceedings. Over the previous days, he'd spread a number of distortions on the pandemic. We are now in the midst of our worst week of coronavirus pandemic, and this is what you need to know. According to the Associated Press, the United States is bracing for its most painful week with a wave of coronavirus deaths expected across the nation. According to the U.S. Surgeon General Jerome Adams, he said, "This will be our Pearl Harbor moment, our 9/11 moment." New York City is the epicenter of the U.S., and New Orleans and Detroit face especially worrying days ahead. Yet, President Donald Trump and Vice President Mike Pence are striking optimistic tones, insisting that hard weeks ahead will ultimately lead to the nation beginning to turn a corner. So what is happening today? How did this all get there, and where are we at right now? The first alarms for the coronavirus were sounded in January. But the Trump administration squandered nearly 2 months that could have been used to bolster the federal stockpile of critically needed medical supplies and equipment. Coronavirus patients around the world are rushing to join studies of an experimental drug that showed promise against some similar viruses in the past. Interest in the drug remdesivir has been so great in the U.S. National Institutes of Health, it's boosting the size of its study. Across the globe, grocery store workers are the front lines during lockdowns. The stores are deemed essential, and their work puts them close to public and therefore at risk. They are also afraid, and reports have been coming in of their fears. Historic failures in the government response to disasters and emergencies, medical abuse, neglect, and exploitation have jaded generations of African Americans into a distrust of public institutions, which we are seeing more and more across African American communities. Millions of dollars and national funds are being made available to agencies around the world to provide aid to Holocaust survivors whose advanced age and health issues make them particularly vulnerable to the new coronavirus. The organization that handles claims on behalf of Jewish victims of the Nazis announced Monday. What you need to know for the coronavirus is as follows. For most people, the coronavirus will cause mild and moderate symptoms, such as fever, cough that'll clear up in 2 or 3 weeks. For some, especially older adults, people with existing health problems, it can be a little bit more severe, including pneumonia and possibly death. The vast majority of people, though, who contract the virus, will recover. One of the best ways to prevent the spread of the virus is washing your hands with soap and water. The U.S. CDC recommends first washing with warm or cold water and then lathering soap for 20 seconds to get it off, and then put water back on your hands, between the fingers, under the fingernails, and then rinse again. This has been your updated Dallas Weekly News for the day, specifically on the coronavirus outbreak and what we're doing in the coming weeks. For more news and information, you can always go to dallasweekly.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Once again, I am Patrick Washington, your host. This has been Dallas Weekly News. Stay safe, and we'll see you tomorrow.